What if the penny sitting in your old jar is not really a 1-cent coin anymore? Lincoln Cents have produced some of the most shocking discoveries in American coin collecting. Tiny differences in metal, striking, dies, and mint production can turn an ordinary-looking penny into the kind of coin collectors chase for years. And that is why you should never judge these pennies by the date alone. In this countdown, we are checking 10 wheat pennies that deserve a much closer look. Some hide their most important clues around the date, others demand attention around the mint mark, lettering, rim, or even the metal itself. And as we move toward number 1, the potential collector story gets bigger. Not because every coin shown here is worth a fortune. It is because the right version of a familiar-looking penny can belong to an entirely different class of collectible. So grab your old pennies, get a magnifying glass, and stay with me. Because one tiny feature can be the difference between a coin you ignore and a coin you never forget. Take a very close look at this 1944 Lincoln Wheat Penny, because this is exactly the kind of date that can make someone stop digging through an old coin jar and start examining every penny inside it. At first glance, there may be nothing dramatic about it. You see Abraham Lincoln, the familiar wheat cent design, and a date millions of people have seen before. But 1944 carries a fascinating secret. With the right characteristics, a penny from this year can move into an entirely different world of collector interest. And that is why you should never look at the date alone. The real question is what happened when that particular coin was produced. Start your inspection with the metal itself. Most people automatically assume an old Lincoln cent should look like copper. But serious collectors know that unusual planches and production mistakes can create some of the most exciting discoveries in American coin collecting. If you ever find a 1944 cent that looks noticeably different from the other pennies around it, do not immediately spend it, and do not immediately assume you have hit the jackpot either. Stop and investigate. Look closely at the color, surface, weight, and overall appearance. An unusual composition can create enormous curiosity because the right-wrong planche combination can separate an ordinary 1-cent piece from the type of rarity collectors dream about finding. Next, inspect the date itself. Look closely at every digit in 1944. Then examine the area below the date for a mint mark. After that, move across Liberty and In God We Trust. Rotate the penny slowly under a light and watch the edges of the letters and numbers. You are looking for genuine characteristics created during production, not random scratches accumulated during decades of circulation. This distinction is critical because an old penny can collect dents, corrosion, flattened lettering, discoloration, and other damage that may look spectacular under magnification but has little collector significance. This is also where the big money dream surrounding old pennies becomes so powerful. Imagine 2 coins carrying the same 1944 date. One may simply be an old circulated cent. The other could have the exact unusual combination of metal, mint characteristics, strike, preservation, or variety that places it in a completely different collector category. That possibility is why knowledgeable hunters inspect these coins rather than judging them from a quick glance. In the extreme world of numismatic rarities, collectors can spend extraordinary amounts chasing the right specimen. That does not mean every 1944 penny is worth thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions. It means the correct rare characteristics are what create the extraordinary value story. And whatever you do, never clean a suspicious 1944 penny. Do not polish it, scrape it, file it, or use chemicals to test the surface. If you actually have something unusual, destroying the original surface could destroy much of the collector appeal along with it. Preserve the coin exactly as you found it and inspect it carefully. So the next time you see 1944 on a Lincoln Wheat Penny, do not just see 1 cent. Look at the metal. Look at the date. Check the mint mark area. Examine the lettering and surfaces. Because in coin collecting, the most exciting discoveries rarely announce themselves. Sometimes they hide behind a familiar date and wait for the one person who knows enough to look twice. Take a very close look at this 1941 S. Lincoln Wheat Penny. Because the tiny letter below the date is exactly where the story starts. That small S mint mark tells you this cent was struck at the San Francisco Mint, and it gives collectors an immediate reason to slow down and inspect the coin instead of treating it like another old penny. The important question is not simply, do I have a 1941S? The important question is, what exactly does my 1941S look like? Because in coin collecting, a familiar date can become much more interesting when the right mint mark characteristics, die details, strike quality, and condition come together. Start with the S mint mark directly below the date. Use magnification if you have it. Look at its shape, its position, and the metal around it. Then inspect the digits in 1941. Move slowly across Liberty, and then check in God We Trust. Look at the edges of the letters and numbers instead of just looking at the center of the design. Sometimes collectors become interested when they see unusual separation, doubling, repunching, or another feature that appears to have been created during the minting process. But this is where beginners can easily make an expensive mistake. A scratch can imitate a die line. Flattened metal can imitate doubling. Corrosion can make a mint mark look distorted. And ordinary circulation damage can create shapes that look dramatic under a microscope. That is why the most important phrase with this coin is genuine mint characteristic. You are looking for a feature that belongs to the way the coin was made, not something that happened years later in somebody's pocket, drawer, or coin jar. Rotate the penny slowly under a strong light. Watch the shadows around the mint mark, date, and major lettering. If something unusual appears only from one lighting angle, inspect it even more carefully before making any conclusion. Now look at Lincoln's portrait. Check the hair above the ear, the cheek, jaw, coat, and bow tie. On older wheat pennies, preservation can make an enormous difference. Two coins can both say 1941S. Yet one may be heavily worn while another retains sharp detail and more attractive original surfaces. That difference can completely change how collectors view them. This is where the big value psychology of coin hunting begins. The date alone does not create a jackpot. The exact variety, condition, original surfaces, and correct diagnostics create the serious collector story. And this is the part that keeps people searching old pennies. A coin that looks ordinary from across the room can reveal an entirely different personality under magnification. One tiny feature around the S mint mark can be enough to make you stop, compare, and investigate further. That does not mean every 1941S is worth thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions of dollars. Those numbers should never be attached to this coin without a specific, verified rarity behind them. But the possibility of finding a genuinely unusual variety, a remarkable strike, or an exceptional surviving example is exactly what creates the wow factor. Whatever you find, do not clean this coin. Do not polish it. Do not scrape the mint mark. Do not use chemicals. Original surfaces matter. If the coin has something genuinely special, cleaning can permanently damage the very feature collectors want. So whenever you find a 1941S wheat penny, remember the inspection order. Check the S mint mark. Check the date. Examine Liberty and In God We Trust. Inspect Lincoln's portrait. Then ask the most important question. Is this just age and damage, or is there something here that happened at the mint? Because sometimes the difference between 1 cent and serious collector money can hide in a detail small enough to miss with the naked eye. Take a very close look at this 1950 S Lincoln Wheat Penny, because the small S mint mark below the date is where the inspection begins. At first glance, this coin can look like nothing more than an old 1-cent piece. But collectors know that an ordinary-looking wheat penny can become far more interesting when the right mint mark detail, die variety, strike characteristic, and condition appear together. That is where the possibility of serious collector money begins, and it is exactly why you should never judge a wheat penny from the date alone. Start directly below the date and study the S mint mark. Use magnification if possible. Look at its shape, position, edges, and the surrounding metal. Then move carefully through the digits in 1950. Examine the 5, the 9, the 5, and especially the 0. After that, inspect Liberty and In God We Trust. You are looking for anything that seems repeated, shifted, unusually strong, or different from the normal design. A genuine die variety, unusual mint mark characteristic, or dramatic production feature can move a coin into an entirely different collector category. But this is where beginners often get fooled. Machine doubling, circulation wear, scratches, corrosion, and flattened metal can create details that look exciting under magnification. A strange mark does not automatically mean you have found a rare error. The important question is whether the unusual feature appears to have been created during the minting process. If the metal looks pushed, scraped, cut, or damaged after circulation, that usually tells a very different story. The valuable version is the coin with the right diagnostic, not simply the coin with the strangest looking surface. Now inspect Lincoln's portrait. Look at the hair above the ear, the cheek, jaw, coat, and bow tie. Condition can make a massive difference in collector interest. Two pennies can both carry the 1950s date, but one may be heavily worn while another retains stronger detail, cleaner fields, and more attractive original surfaces. That difference can move the discussion from a basic old penny to a premium collector coin. And when rare characteristics combine with exceptional preservation, that is where collectors begin talking about 5-figure, 6-figure, and potentially even more dramatic value territory for the right kind of Lincoln cent rarity. That does not mean every 1950s wheat penny is worth huge money. The jackpot only exists when the coin has the exact combination collectors are searching for. But this is what makes the hunt so addictive. A coin worth almost nothing to one person can become extremely important to another once the correct variety, mint characteristic, or high-grade condition is identified. Rotate the coin slowly under a strong light. Watch the edges of the S mint mark, the date, and the major lettering. Sometimes a subtle feature becomes much easier to see when shadows move across the surface. And if you notice something unusual, do not clean the coin. Do not polish it, scrape it, rub it, or use chemicals. Original surfaces can be critical to collector value. So whenever you find a 1950s Lincoln Wheat Penny, do not just think 1 cent. Check the S mint mark. Check the date. Study the lettering. Inspect Lincoln's portrait. Compare the surfaces. And ask one question. Is this simply an old penny, or does it have the exact feature that could move it into serious collector territory? Because in coin collecting, the difference between pocket change and a major collector prize can sometimes hide in a detail smaller than the tip of a pencil. Take a very close look at this 1955 Lincoln Wheat Penny, because this is one of those dates that can instantly change the mood of a coin hunt. A person who knows nothing about pennies may see an old brown cent. An experienced collector sees 1955 and immediately starts looking for one specific kind of detail. And if the right feature is present. This little 1 cent coin can move from pocket change into serious collector money. That is why you should never glance at a 1955 wheat penny and move on. This date deserves a much slower inspection. Begin with the date itself. Look carefully at all 4 digits in 1955. Then move your eyes to Liberty and finally to In God We Trust. These are some of the most important areas to inspect because the famous attraction connected with this date is doubling. On the right type of coin, the doubling can be dramatic enough to create the kind of visual effect collectors immediately notice. Letters and numbers may appear to have strong separation rather than simply looking blurry or flattened. When the correct diagnostic is present, the coin enters an entirely different category from an ordinary circulated 1955 cent. This is also where beginners make one of the biggest mistakes in wheat penny collecting. They see a second edge around a letter and immediately believe they have found a 1955 doubled die. But machine doubling, wear, surface damage, and lighting reflections can create convincing false positives. Genuine double die characteristics are part of the die itself. That means you should inspect several areas instead of relying on one questionable mark. Compare the date, Liberty, and In God We Trust. If the same convincing type of separation appears in the important diagnostic areas, that is when the coin deserves much more attention. Now think about the value difference this can create. One 1955 penny may simply be another circulated wheat cent. Another 1955 with the right double die characteristics, attractive original surfaces, and strong preservation can enter five-figure territory, while exceptional examples of major Lincoln cent rarities can push towards six-figure collector money. That enormous gap is what makes this date so exciting. The year printed on the coin may be identical, but the collector significance can be completely different. This is exactly the kind of hunt that creates the jackpot feeling people associate with searching old pennies. Now inspect Lincoln's portrait. Look closely at the hair, ear, cheek, jaw, bow tie, and coat. Strong surviving detail matters because condition becomes increasingly important once you have a genuinely desirable variety. Then rotate the coin slowly under good lighting. Watch how shadows move around the numbers and lettering. A real doubled feature should remain part of the design as the lighting changes. A reflection can disappear. A scratch may reveal itself. This simple test can prevent a lot of false excitement. And whatever you do, do not clean a 1955 penny that appears unusual. Do not polish it. Do not rub the letters. Do not scrape the date trying to see the doubling more clearly. Original surfaces can be extremely important once a coin moves into serious collector territory. So every time you find a 1955 Lincoln Wheat Penny, stop, check the date. Check Liberty. Check In God We Trust. Look specifically for the double die style diagnostics that separate an ordinary cent from the version collectors dream about finding. Because this is one of those dates where the difference between 1 cent and a major five-figure or six-figure collector prize can literally hide inside the lettering. A penny dated 1920 has already survived for more than a century, but age alone is not what makes this coin worth investigating. The real excitement begins when an old penny has the right mint characteristic, an unusual production feature, or a level of preservation that separates it from thousands of heavily circulated survivors. That is why a 1920 Lincoln Wheat Penny should never be judged by its brown color or worn appearance alone. Sometimes the most important clue is not obvious until you know exactly where to search. Begin with the date. Make sure all 4 digits are clear and actually read 1920. Then, inspect the area immediately below the date for a mint mark. Do not assume one is present if you cannot clearly see it. After that, move to Liberty and then across In God We Trust. Look carefully at the edges of the letters and numbers. If something appears doubled, shifted, unusually thick, or dramatically different from the surrounding design, that is when you slow down. The question is not whether the penny looks strange. The question is whether the unusual feature could have been created at the mint. Coins this old create another challenge. More than 100 years of circulation can produce scratches, dents, corrosion, flattened lettering, rim damage, and environmental discoloration. These effects can sometimes imitate a rare error or die variety. That is why one unusual mark should never be enough to convince you. Compare several areas of the coin. Study the date. Study Lincoln's portrait. Inspect the lettering. Look at the rim. A genuine production characteristic should make sense with the way the coin was originally struck. Now think about what happens when age, condition, and rarity come together. A heavily worn 1920 cent may tell one story. An unusually sharp example with strong original detail can tell a completely different one. And if a genuine major mint error, recognized variety, or extraordinary production anomaly is added to that combination, the collector interest can rise dramatically. This is where people begin dreaming about big money coins, five-figure collector prizes, and the kind of extreme discoveries that can move towards six-figure territory when the rarity is truly exceptional. But the important distinction is this: the date alone does not create the jackpot. The exact feature does. Now inspect Lincoln's portrait. Look at the hair above the ear, the cheek, jaw, coat, and bow tie. On a coin more than a century old, surviving detail can be surprisingly important. If the portrait still looks unusually sharp, that deserves attention. Then examine the rim all the way around. A dramatic rim or planche abnormality can create curiosity, but remember that damage after the coin left the mint is very different from a genuine production error. And if you find something unusual, do not clean it. Do not polish it. Do not scrape away dark areas. Do not use chemicals trying to reveal brighter metal. An untouched old penny can retain the original surfaces collectors want, while aggressive cleaning can permanently destroy that appeal. So when you find a 1920 wheat penny, do not just think, "This coin is old." Think like a collector. Check the date. Check the mint mark area. Inspect the lettering, portrait, rim, and surfaces. Ask whether you are seeing ordinary century-old wear or something that actually happened during production. Because sometimes the real treasure is not the age of the penny, it is the tiny detail that survived with it. Something about this 1951 Lincoln Wheat Penny immediately looks different, and that is exactly where the investigation should begin. The shape, the rim, and the way the design sits inside the coin can make you wonder whether something unusual happened during production. But this is also one of the easiest situations in coin collecting to misread. A strange-looking penny can be a genuine mint error, or it can simply be a coin that was damaged decades after it left the mint. The difference between those two possibilities can mean the difference between an interesting damaged cent and a major collector prize. Start with the D mint mark below the date. Confirm that the coin reads 1951D. Then study the area surrounding the mint mark. Look at the shape of the D, its position, and whether the surrounding metal appears normal. After that, inspect the date itself. Look at every digit in 1951 and watch for anything that appears doubled, distorted, or unusually positioned. Then move toward liberty, and in God we trust. But on this particular coin, do not stop with the lettering. The rim and overall shape deserve just as much attention. Follow the rim slowly around the entire coin. Ask yourself whether the design seems naturally affected by the unusual shape. This is important because a genuine striking error, planche error, or another major mint production problem often affects multiple parts of the coin in a logical way. If a coin was altered later by cutting, squeezing, grinding, bending, or impact damage, the metal can tell a very different story. That distinction is where serious collector value begins. And this is where the big money possibility becomes exciting. Dramatic, genuine mint errors are among the kinds of coins that can attract extremely strong collector demand. When the right error is unmistakable, dramatic, scarce, and preserved well, the value can move far beyond what anyone would expect from a 1-cent coin. Exceptional Lincoln cent errors and major rarities can enter 5-figure, 6-figure. And in the most extraordinary corners of the hobby, the kind of jackpot-level territory that makes headlines. But the important word is genuine. A damaged penny does not become valuable simply because it looks strange. Now study Lincoln's portrait. Check whether the face, hair, coat, and surrounding lettering appear stretched, incomplete, shifted, or affected in a way that relates to the rim. Then inspect the opposite side of the coin whenever possible. A genuine production error often tells a story across both sides. That is why seeing only one side should never be enough to make an extreme claim. This coin also teaches one of the most valuable habits in collecting. Do not try to fix something that looks wrong. Never bend the coin back into shape. Never file the rim. Never scrape the surface. Never polish it. If the unusual appearance was created at the mint, altering the coin could destroy the evidence that makes it collectible. So when you encounter a 1951 wheat penny that looks unusual, do not immediately call it damaged, and do not immediately call it rare. Investigate. Check the D mint mark. Study the rim. Compare the date, lettering, and portrait. Look for a consistent production story. Because with this coin, the most important question is not why does it look strange. The real question is, did this happen before or after it left the mint? And if the answer turns out to be at the mint, that strange little penny could suddenly become far more interesting than its 1-cent face value suggests. A coin does not need a bold D or S mint mark to deserve attention. Sometimes the most dangerous penny to overlook is the one that appears completely normal. That is what makes this 1937 Lincoln Wheat Penny interesting. At first glance, there is no dramatic feature screaming for attention. But that ordinary appearance is exactly why collectors slow down. With an old Lincoln cent, the real opportunity can hide in the die details, the strike, the lettering, or a production characteristic most people would never notice during a quick inspection. Begin with the 1937 date. Look closely at the edges of every digit, especially the 3, 7, and the curves around the 9. Do not simply confirm the year and move on. Look for unusual thickness, separation, or distortion that appears to be part of the original design. Then shift your attention toward Liberty. Study each letter individually. After that, inspect In God We Trust. These areas are important because subtle die characteristics can be easier to recognize in lettering than in the larger portrait. Now move to Lincoln's face. Look at the eye, ear, hair, cheek, jaw, coat, and bow tie. An old wheat penny can lose a tremendous amount of detail through circulation, so one of the first questions is whether you are seeing a genuine production feature or simply decades of wear. That distinction is critical. A flattened letter can imitate doubling. A scratch can look like a die line. Corrosion can create raised or recessed shapes. Even unusual lighting can make normal edges appear doubled. This is why the real target is a consistent mint-made feature. If something appears unusual around one letter, compare it with the rest of the coin. Does the same type of characteristic appear elsewhere? Does it fit naturally with the strike? Or does it look like random damage that happened later? That investigation is where the hobby becomes much more exciting than simply reading dates. And this is also where the big value possibility enters the story. A basic circulated 1937 penny and an exceptional coin with a recognized variety, dramatic mint error, or extraordinary preservation are not the same collectible. The right combination can move a Lincoln cent from a jar coin into serious collector territory. Major Lincoln cent rarities, spectacular mint errors, and exceptional condition pieces can command 5-figure and even 6-figure money when the exact rarity supports it. That does not mean every 1937 wheat penny carries that value. It means the correct diagnostic can completely change what collectors are willing to pay attention to. Now examine the rim all the way around. Look for anything that appears unusually struck, incomplete, or distorted. Then inspect the surfaces under changing light. Rotate the penny slowly rather than holding it flat. Shadows can reveal small details that disappear under direct lighting. If you see something unusual, resist the temptation to clean the coin. Do not polish it. Do not scrape it. Do not use chemicals. Original surfaces can be extremely important, especially if the coin turns out to have a meaningful variety or mint characteristic. So when a 1937 Lincoln Wheat Penny appears in an old jar or inherited collection, do not dismiss it simply because nothing dramatic jumps out immediately. Check the date. Check Liberty. Inspect In God We Trust. Study Lincoln's portrait, the rim, and the surfaces. Because the penny that looks the least exciting at first may be the one that rewards the person willing to inspect it longest. And sometimes the difference between 1 cent and a major collector discovery begins with a detail almost everyone else ignored. What if the most important part of this penny is not the 1945 date, but the tiny letter sitting directly underneath it? That small S mint mark identifies a San Francisco issue, and it gives you a very specific reason to inspect this wheat penny instead of throwing it into the same pile as every other old cent. A 1945 S may look completely ordinary at first, but collectors know that the real excitement begins when date, mint mark, die characteristics, condition, and strike quality start working together. One tiny difference can take a coin from an old 1-cent piece to something worthy of much closer attention. Your first checkpoint is the S mint mark. Do not simply confirm that it is there. Study the shape of the S, its position below the date and the metal immediately around it, then move upward into 1945. Look closely at each digit. Inspect the edges for anything that appears unusually thick, separated, shifted, or inconsistent with the surrounding design. From there, move across Liberty and then inspect In God We Trust. These areas can reveal small die-related characteristics that casual viewers may never notice. This is where experience matters. A penny that has circulated for decades can develop scratches, dents, flattened letters, corrosion, discoloration, and countless other marks. Those features can easily imitate something more exciting. Machine doubling, circulation damage, and die deterioration can fool beginners into believing they have discovered a major rarity. So do not rely on one suspicious-looking letter. Compare several parts of the coin. A legitimate variety or mint-created characteristic should make sense across the design. Now shift your attention to Lincoln's portrait. Inspect the hair above the ear, the cheek, jaw, bow tie, and coat. If the details remain unusually sharp, the coin may deserve additional attention because condition can dramatically affect collector interest. Two coins carrying exactly the same 1945 S-date can have completely different appeal. One may be worn nearly smooth after decades in circulation. Another may retain stronger details, better surfaces, and a much more impressive strike. That difference is where the big money side of coin collecting becomes fascinating. The correct combination of a recognized variety, a genuine production characteristic, and exceptional preservation can move a Lincoln cent into serious collector money. Important Lincoln cent varieties and extraordinary mint errors can reach five-figure or even six-figure territory when the exact rarity supports that level of demand. That does not mean every 1945 S carries a huge value. The value belongs to the right coin with the right diagnostic. Use changing light during your inspection. Tilt the penny slowly and watch how shadows travel around the S mint mark, the date, and the lettering. Genuine design characteristics remain part of the coin as the lighting changes, while reflections and some surface damage may become much easier to recognize. And if you discover something unusual, do not clean the coin. Do not polish it. Do not scrape around the mint mark. Do not try to make the copper brighter. Original surfaces can be a major part of a collectible coin's appeal. So when you find a 1945 S Lincoln Wheat Penny, remember that the hunt starts with one tiny letter. Check the S mint mark. Inspect the 1945 date, study the lettering, examine Lincoln's portrait, and evaluate the surface's AND strike. Because sometimes a penny does not need to look spectacular to hide an important story. It only needs the right detail in the right place. Most people would look at a 1934 Lincoln Wheat Penny and think the story is simply its age. But collectors know that age is only the beginning. The real question is whether this particular penny carries the right combination of date, strike, surface quality, die characteristics, and condition. That is what can separate an ordinary old cent from a coin that deserves serious attention. And with a coin approaching a century old, even small surviving details can completely change the way collectors look at it. Your first inspection point is the 1934 date. Do not just read the year and move on. Look closely at the shape of each digit. Check the edges of the 1, the curves of the 9 and 3, and the final 4. Then move toward Liberty. Study the individual letters. After that, inspect In God We Trust. You are looking for anything that appears unusually thick, shifted, separated, or different from the surrounding design. A legitimate die variety or mint-created feature can be subtle, which is exactly why magnification can be so useful. Now look at Lincoln's portrait. Pay attention to the hair above the ear, the cheek, jaw, coat, and bow tie. On an old wheat penny, those high points are among the first areas to show wear. If a 1934 cent still retains unusually strong detail, that can make the coin much more interesting. The difference between a heavily worn example and a sharply preserved example can be dramatic, especially when original surfaces and a strong strike are still present. This is also where beginners can get trapped by appearances. A scratch may look like a die crack. Flattened metal may resemble doubling. Dark corrosion may create strange shapes around the letters. And circulation damage can make the rim appear unusual. None of those things automatically create a rare error. The feature has to make sense as part of the original minting process. That is why you should compare multiple areas instead of making a decision from one strange-looking mark. Now consider the value side of the story. A basic circulated 1934 penny and an exceptional 1934 cent with a significant variety, dramatic mint error, or extraordinary preservation are completely different collectibles. The right Lincoln cent rarity can move into five-figure collector money, and truly exceptional major varieties or mint errors can reach six-figure territory when the exact diagnostic and rarity support it. That is the kind of possibility that makes old penny hunting so addictive. You may start with a coin carrying a face value of 1 cent, but the right combination can put it into an entirely different collector class. The key phrase here is the right combination. The year alone is not enough. The coin needs the correct feature, the correct condition, and the correct evidence. Tilt the penny under a strong light. Watch the shadows around the date, liberty, and in God we trust. Then inspect the rim and the open fields around Lincoln. If you notice something unusual, do not rub the surface trying to make it clearer. Do not clean it. Do not polish it. Do not scrape it. An old copper cent can lose much of its collector appeal once the original surface has been disturbed. So if a 1934 wheat penny turns up in an inherited collection, coin jar, or old roll, do not dismiss it just because nothing dramatic jumps out immediately. Examine the date, the lettering, Lincoln's portrait, the rim, and the surfaces. Because sometimes the penny that looks quietest is the one hiding the most important clue. And in coin collecting, one tiny mint-made detail can be enough to turn an overlooked cent into a major collector discovery. If you find a 1927 D Lincoln Wheat Penny, do not make the mistake of looking only at the age and dropping it back into the pile. The real story begins with the tiny D mint mark beneath the date. That one letter tells you this penny came from the Denver Mint, but the mint mark alone is not what creates the excitement. What collectors really want to know is whether the coin has the right condition, the right strike, an unusual die characteristic, or some other legitimate mint-made feature that separates it from an ordinary circulated example. On a coin that has survived for almost a century, those differences can become extremely important. Your first checkpoint is the 1927 D-date A&D mint mark area. Use magnification and inspect the D carefully. Look at its shape, placement, and the surrounding metal. Then study each digit in 1927. Pay attention to the edges of the numbers. After that, move across liberty and in God we trust. If you notice unusual thickness, separation, distortion, or another feature that appears to be part of the original strike, stop and investigate further. The goal is not to find something that simply looks strange. The goal is to find something that appears genuinely connected to the minting process. This is especially important with older wheat pennies because decades of circulation can create convincing false alarms. A scratch can imitate a die crack. Flattened lettering can resemble doubling. Corrosion can distort the mint mark. Rim damage can make the coin look misstruck, and heavy wear can completely change Lincoln's facial details. That is why experienced collectors compare the entire coin instead of becoming excited about one suspicious mark. Now, inspect Lincoln's portrait. Look at the hair, ear, cheek, jaw, bow tie, and coat. On a 1927 D cent, preservation can become part of the story because many old coins have spent decades moving through circulation. A coin that retains unusually sharp details, strong lettering, and attractive original surfaces can attract much more attention than a heavily worn example of the same date. Once condition, rarity, and a legitimate variety or error start coming together, the collector conversation can change dramatically. And this is where the big money dream keeps people searching old penny jars. The correct Lincoln cent rarity can move far beyond its 1 cent face value. Major varieties, genuine mint errors. An extraordinary high-grade Lincoln cents can reach 5-figure or even 6-figure collector territory when the exact coin genuinely supports that level of rarity and demand. That does not mean every 1927D is worth that kind of money. The important point is that the right diagnostic can completely change what a collector is looking at. Now examine the rim from one side to the other. Look for unusual metal flow, missing design areas, or anything else that appears connected to the original strike. Then tilt the coin slowly beneath a light. Changing the angle can reveal details around the D-mint mark, date, and lettering that are easy to miss when the coin is held flat. If you see something unusual, preserve it exactly as it is. Do not clean it. Do not polish it. Do not scrape the date or mint mark. Original surfaces can be extremely important if the coin turns out to have a meaningful collector characteristic. So whenever a 1927 D wheat penny appears in an old collection, remember the sequence. Inspect the D mint mark. Check the 1927 date. Examine the lettering, Lincoln's portrait, rim, strike, and surfaces. Because a penny can spend almost 100 years looking ordinary. And then one tiny mint-made detail can suddenly make someone realize that it deserves a much closer look.